Welcome back. Today we are going to make some rocket fuel, and the first step is to make phthalic acid, which is made with potassium dichromate. This can be made in many ways, but the fastest one requires a ZPM chemical reactor. Since we don't even have access to LUV, we shall do that by using 8 IV energy hatches. Once we have fully charged the batteries for that setup, we can see that this thing doesn't work. And thus we shall have 2 additional small reactors to soften the process requirements. And now we can get the potassium dichromate for the phthalic acid. Phthalic acid has many usages, and the first one we will want to do is to make diphenyl isophthalate, which is one of the 2 ingredients needed for making polybenzimidazole, also known as PBI. The other ingredient is 3,3-diaminobenzidine, which can easily be synthesized from 3,3-dichlorobenzidine, which we make out of 2-nitrochlorobenzene. Now that we have PBI, we can assemble a better thermal protection, which will help us survive the harsh outer space exploration that we will do with our new rocket. But it looks like we have forgotten something. The reason why we made phthalic acid was not for PBI, but for rocket fuel. So, we go back to dehydrating some of it to get some phthalic anhydride. We bring that to our chemical plant, where we react it with ethylbenzene to get some 2-ethylenthroquinone. Since that is a catalyst, we get that fluid to an automated setup for further processing. This chemical plant is going to self-feed on itself a lot of its products, but let's see them one at a time. First we turn the 2-ethylenthroquinone into 2-ethylenthrohydroquinone, which we use to make hydrogen peroxide. That will also give back some 2-ethylenthroquinone. Finally, we add some other stuff to make hydrazine. And here we have all the inputs. Now all we have to do is to push the start button. And once the hydrazine is produced, we can retrieve it from our main terminal. We manually add some methanol to obtain dense hydrazine, which is a fuel rocket that can work with our Tier 3 rocket. And once we loaded our new rocket, we can take off to the new planets and moons. And the main destination is going to be Ceres, where we can find platinum veins. While we wait for our miners, we can do the last chemical chain of the IV quest page, monazite. This chemical line requires some crushed ores which we are already processing in other ways. To ensure it gets to that line, we use a high priority storage bus on a drawer. And here, instead of the usual mineral processing machines, we use a digester to digest those heavy rocks. The output then goes into a dissolution tank. And this machine requires the inputs to have a specific ratio to be able to work. So we are going to move the fluids slowly at steady steps with covers that will control the level inside the hatches. And this seems to work as intended by stopping once we reach 9 metric cubes of fluid. We do the same with the other input. And once we have properly regulated the fluid inputs, we can start the second processing step in the dissolution tank. The output has to be sifted to get a lot of products, but the one we care the most is the monazite sulfate dust, which we bath in some acid. Then we sift it again. We give it a quick dry in a blast furnace. We react with nitric acid. We mix in some other chemicals. Then we run that poor compound in a sifter one more time. And we vacuum freeze the outputs. Using the new upcoming polarizer in electromagnetic separator mode, we take out stuff that may not even be ferromagnetic. We reuse the previous EBF to extract heterogeneous halogenic monazite rare earth mixture dust. We mix it with other stuff up to its saturation point. And then I guess we separate what we just mixed in, from which we can finally sift out some samarium. This is going to be required for the motors of the next tier. We followed the main processing path, but there are some byproduct we have left behind, so we shall gather those too. But we mostly reused the same machines. And we shall also do the bastnastite line since we are doing weird mineral lines. This is more streamlined and the main output is holmium. We are once again going to reuse as many machines as possible. Now we can go back to Ceres to retrieve our platinum, and, once back, we find a nice surprise. We also have gathered some Naquadah, which will allow us to start one more funny chemical line. Unlike the previous artificial chemical processing, this line is going to be more based on fantasy and imagination. We start by preparing some shaved ice. Then we add some antimony aroma, but they added too much flavor and now it looked like one of the previous chemicals. So we try to distill it to see how much more we can concentrate the aroma. But we want it to be slightly sour, so we make it more acid. And now it is the perfect moment to add in the main ingredient, the Naquadah. After heating it, we centrifuge out some of the residue of the artificial aroma. Now, this is still low quality, so we have to add some seasoning, such as P507. And, as you can see, our Naquadah is no longer low quality, since we have used some good P507, made by manually farming some organic nuts for its oil component. The last touch is to activate the neutrons inside our dish to make it feel funny on the tongue. However, we do not have the cooking tools required for such tasks. To make one, we need a precision assembler. But, to make a precision assembler we need some dope Naquadah wafers. The convenience store doesn't keep them, so we have to go with the pause man way of making Naquadah. And with those small amounts made in an ugly way we have just enough for our precision assembler. However, that was just the controller block. We also need a stack of the casings. And here we run into an issue, we need an LUV assembler. So I guess we should go back on track and start working on the assembly line for the LUV tier. But I think this deserves its own episode. Bye bye.